You are listening to Three Kitchens podcast, hosted by Heather Dyer and Aaron Walker. To find our complete catalog of episodes, check out any of your favorite podcast players.
Or our website, threekitchenspodcast.com. All right. Welcome to Three Kitchens Podcast. I am Heather, and with me is my co-host, Aaron.
Hello.
And today we have a special guest. Her name is Kesia Kvill. She is a community engagement manager at a heritage museum in Edmonton, Alberta. She has been the chief curator of the largest living history museum in Canada, which, if I'm not wrong, is Heritage Park here in Calgary. Okay, look at me. I'm like, I think I know this one. She started her museum career as a demonstration volunteer at an agricultural museum. She was a first museum interpreter and tour guide job. Her academic studies focused on Canadian foodways, public history, rural history. And she is passionate about community, sustainability, and youth mentorship, and spends her free time sewing and gardening, learning to care for her 1940s bungalow, and being entertained by her dog and her two cats. Welcome, Kesia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
That is quite the bio.
Oh, thank you.
Wouldn't you say, Aaron? Like, I was like, wow, there's a lot
Right?
going on here.
Yeah, I think I've done a lot of things.
Yeah, and we have a lot in common, I think, the three of us.
Awesome.
When I read 1940s bungalow, I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Dog and a cat, yes.
Very good.
Sewing and gardening, yes, yes.
Such great hobbies and pets.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And just the focus and the studies that you're doing, going more in depth into Canadian food history, because
hmm
I think that's something that Heather and I talk about a lot, whether we really define it as that or have defined it as that in the past, but we both have similar immigrant backgrounds, and exploring the food history, especially from a prairie sort of standpoint, is something that we spend a lot of time talking about and comparing and taking notes on. And so hearing that there's this research going into it and that you're focused on that is really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love exploring kind of the food and what people bring with them for food from different places because we live in such a wonderfully diverse
Hmm.
province and a wonderfully diverse country. So there's so much to explore with food history, and that food history isn't just like from 1900, it's like happening right now too, which is super cool.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great way to look at it. Just
hmm
before you hopped on, talk we were talking to each other about um, this question that we have when people say, like you often see people say, what's a Canadian food? What is Canadian food?
Mm.
And when you think Canadian food, are you thinking Canada as a country, like since inception, or is it more of a place? Because that would go way much further back.
Yeah, I think of it as a place rather than as like the country 1867 or whenever your province joins Confederation. I definitely
Mm,
think of it as like the land we now call Canada as the place because that allows us to have that longer Canadian food history.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because some people will say that the indigenous diet and the indigenous
Mhm.
culture of food is Canadian food, but it predates the
Yeah.
country of
Hmm.
Canada. So yeah,
Yeah,
just
I think we can call it that, but it's also very much it's Indigenous foodways and it's its own thing that doesn't belong to Canada. It belongs to the nations
mm,
of that inhabit the land because all of them have different foodways too. So you can be like Blackfoot food is different than like Mi'kmaq food, like very different places. So their food is informed as our all of our food is informed by region and space that you're in.
Even now, one of the hardest things to define is like what Canadian food is, just because we have this huge expanse
Yeah.
from time zone to time zone, from Arctic Circle all the way down, right? Like we've got this
Yeah.
huge area that we're talking about, and there's not one
There
blanket
isn't.
that can cover
Yeah.
all of it, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's so I find it like one of the biggest pet peeves for me is people just saying blanket like, "Oh, this is Canadian." I'm like, I mean, yes, it is. Like, what isn't Canadian at this point? Like, but also
Mm.
saying all Canadians have bagged milk or all Canadians have like this, and I'm like, that's really not true. We
Mm.
have such a big country; it would be impossible. It's like big as Europe. Like it's crazy, crazy talk.
Right? It's
Yeah.
so much
Yeah,
easier to kind of think of or define cultural food when it's in a smaller place and when we just look
yeah.
at like the smaller communities. And so I
Hmm.
almost feel like when you talk about like Canadian food history, it's like community food history, right? And exploring all those
Yeah,
different communities within.
yeah. Absolutely agree.
So what was your introduction to history and food history in particular?
Okay. So I mean, I'm like a third generation museum person, so I've just been around history. My mom was a social studies teacher. I'm very like, I don't think it ever occurred to me to really do anything else. So the food history part, when I was, oh, I must have been in early junior high. My dad brought me to the museum he was at in Wetaskiwin at Reynolds, and was like, "Here, volunteer." And one of the things they had me do was rewrite the harvest cookbook and just kind of redo it. I was not good by any means, but it took some of the recipes. I added a couple more in, and one of the women. Uh, the who ran the Friends of Reynolds Museum at that time, she gave me two cookbooks as a thank you, and they were reprints of the home cookbook from Toronto from around 1877 and a reprint of the Five Roses cookbook from 1915. And both of those were uh, kind of edited or introduced by Elizabeth Driver, who is a prominent culinary food historian in Canada. So that kind of started my interest in it. I was like, oh, this is super cool. And
Right.
then I went and volunteered, or not vol yeah, volunteered, and then worked at Heritage Park in Calgary. And part of that is being at a foodways site. And I was like, this is so much fun. And then I was like, why are we cooking these specific things? Because I feel like, oh, we can talk about this, like, oh, we're cooking tea cakes in this rectory because we're going to have people over for tea. But I'm like, there's so much more meaning behind this. I want to find out more. And so I just kind of at university in the winters and falls, it's like, oh, I want to learn more about food history and like why we're picking certain ingredients at different places and why we're not talking about that because food history, there's a lot of people who've been practicing types of food history for so long, or culinary history, some people would call it, but to like actually have it as an academic study has been very recent. So
Hmm.
it was really fun to go on a journey of exploration. So I just kind of got into it from that and just kept going. I think also, I know this is going to sound hilarious, but I watched the movie Ratatouille and was like, I want to be a chef. And that was very quickly like dismissed because I met someone who was a chef and was a woman, and she said, don't like she had been one. She's like, I left for a reason. Like it's not good for women right now in like the
Oh
culinary
no.
industry. So I was like, oh, like okay, but it still informs like how I am and what I'm interested in. Like it's hilarious that it's like, oh, Ratatouille also really sparked something in me.
Well, it's such a fun movie,
Well,
and
Yeah,
yeah, come
absolutely.
on. Everyone wants to be a chef after watching
with
that.
a little rat
Even
directing
a
you, and
mouse, like a rat can
yeah.
do it. I surely can do this. A lot of people forget about the production side and like when I think of food history encompasses kind of the entirety of a food system. It's not just about like what we eat or how we make it, or the recipe. It's like growing it. It's the selling of it. It's preserving it. It's businesses. It's government, politics, culture. Like it's all of the parts of things that inform food and how we eat and what we think is food. Um, like it's all tied together, and it starts with the production of food because
Hmm.
we don't eat without farmers.
Well, yeah, exactly, right?
Mhm.
And we're so much more removed from it in a city setting. And the bigger the
Yeah.
city gets, the more removed you become.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of people living sort of self-reliance and growing food and
Hmm.
that kind of life, no matter where they are.
Totally.
Hmm.
It's kind of a trend again.
It is. Yeah. I
Yeah.
would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's kind of cool, really.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's interesting the things that lead us to those things. You think about the First World War and the Second World War and people having vacant lot gardenings or tilling up their yards and say, okay, it's time to put in a victory garden for whatever reason, whether it's like that means we for sure have more food, or it's because like let's stick it to Hitler. Um, like it's we do like during COVID too, like the the gardens that people were like, I'm gonna do this. It gives us a sense of control, I think, over stuff. It's like very yeah, it's that self-reliance and they're like, I have control over this. And now it's like grocery prices. It's like a really big reason to grow stuff for some people. It's nice to see, and I'm hoping more people tackle like gardening in their own yards or their spaces or containers, however they can, or community gardens are really great too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping to see more and more of that. Yeah, I think about like when we grew up, there weren't as much like we go out a lot now. I think it's like millennials. It's like, oh, we go out for dinner. But I remember growing up and it was potlucks or dinner at someone's house. It's not like a dinner party. It's like someone brings a salad, someone does the main, and
Mm-hmm.
you just eat together. Just from a standpoint of I think growing up with families that aren't as economically like making as much money. But also I think that that aspect of like, oh, we still want to get together and enjoy around food. We don't want to go out. Restaurants aren't as popular. I think going out to eat wasn't as popular growing up, but that
Mm-hmm.
way of saying like we still want to connect and have food, and we'll just do it at people's houses. And I'm like, I'd love to see that come back.
People would also make food together. You come together to
Mm,
cook, not just
Yeah.
bring the food in and eat together, but actually make food
mm,
together.
Mm-hmm. I
yeah.
have noticed like we recently did some family reunions over last summer with my
Mm,
husband's family, who is a big prairie grandparent generation, right? With
yeah.
hundreds of people and all this family. And, at the end of things, like there would be a group of people washing up and
Hmm.
working together in the kitchen to prepare stuff, to clean up,
Yeah.
to feed the kids, like just
Hmm.
that connection and community. And I think especially between women, it's
Yeah.
something that doesn't really happen anymore. I mean,
Mm,
there's so many recipes that we've made over time that we're like, oh, this would be so much better to do with like 4 or 5 people, triple the batch, and just make
yeah.
more than enough for everybody and split it at the
Yeah.
end, because doing it by yourself is long and the steps are many, and like that divide and conquer thing that
Mm,
brings people together to cook together is,
yeah.
I mean, it's something that I think about, like, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Well,
If we could touch a bit on some of the research, you talking about World War I and World War II,
mhm,
and sort of like what
mhm.
kind of projects do you like to work on, and where does your research sort of focus around?
Yeah. Like my dissertation that I was writing, was specifically on food in the First World War. I'm kind of really interested right now in this idea of like food during times of scarcity or like implied scarcity or during conflict. And I mean, it's really, unfortunately, so relevant right now. I never thought going into like my research area that it would be quite as relevant. There's been things like COVID happened. I was like, oh, this is stupidly relevant. And like the like the idea of eating local. I did my master's dissertation or thesis was on restaurants in Western Canada, and one of the recurring themes is this idea of local food. Well, now we're talking so much about eating local. In the past, it was always you eat local first because that's just the default. Like that's what you eat the local thing first. And even I thought that was super relevant, and it remained relevant in my research into the First World War. That idea of local food, because it's the local food uses less fuel to get to you. And they're trying to save fuel, not for environmental reasons, for war reasons. But those are like some of these weird parallels that have happened. I find
Mm,
super interesting. So it's like the way that I think the way that the context in the world surrounds and shapes food systems, I find that incredibly fascinating. And so, kind of that interest in that scarcity and implied scarcity for me, I'm like really interested right now in like how the 30s and like food around that time period is perceived, and how people are adapting things. Like I think there's a lot of starch heavy recipes from that period that's based on just a little bit of looking because it's what fills you up.
Hmm.
Um, so I think I find that quite fascinating to see how like the discourse around food impacts the recipes and what people
Mm.
are printing in recipe books. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think every time period there's something, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and now it's come back to local, eat local in terms of supporting the community, supporting business
Mm,
and small,
mm-hmm,
especially small business. It's like there's a
mm-hmm.
that movement been for a number of years now
Yeah,
to support local. And
Hmm.
now, of course, just given broader geopolitical things happening, support
yeah,
local to support Canada. So it's like,
yeah,
I mean, you're right. It's like it just cycles around and around and around.
yeah. Yeah, and I think we can like I'm still struggling with what I can use from the past that can inform me now, but like we can learn from it in some ways. It's like, oh, like how were people actually, what did the food system look like so that it was local? Because our food system and our, when I think about like the food that doesn't go across the country as well. It comes up in north and south really easily, but it doesn't seem to go from east to west as easily, and that's like very historical Canadian problem actually. Just because of
Right.
the like it's geography. It's really directly tied to geography, and that's why they build the railway across, right? Like
Yeah.
to force that east to west, and then we kind of lose that. And it's like, oh, well, but why would I not? Like, California is closer than Nova Scotia. So it makes sense. It does make sense environmentally to say I will have like produce from here rather than from Nova Scotia because it's closer.
Hmm.
And we like variety now. We've gotten used to this like shipping system of overnighting things on planes, and like we can get stuff from all over the world and it's still good because of refrigeration. Um,
Hmm.
like, oh, it's miraculous and amazing, but also like it's really disconnected us so much from locality and like seasonality and regional foodways. Like it's disconnected us quite a bit. I love having the variety. I'm so lucky to have things that are different than what our ancestors ate. It's wonderful, but it's also very like disconnected from place.
Yeah. Like there used to be mandarin orange season and there used to
Mm,
be strawberry season. And
yeah.
that's become such a constant where like my kids will be like, "What do you mean there were no strawberries at the store this week?" And it's like, well,
They're not growing right now.
Yeah.
like it's that
February.
Yeah.
going and finding another zone where the conditions are a different season on the other side of the world just so that you can have
Hmm.
strawberries. It's kind of
Hmm.
ridiculous, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you
Hmm.
like talked to your parents about the seasonality of food growing up for them even? Like my
Mm,
mom was like, we ate a lot of canned fruit because we live in Alberta in 1970 and there weren't we can't grow a peach here. Like
no.
Yeah.
you might if you're lucky, you might get some peaches from BC
Hmm.
at the right season, but you're getting tons of canned fruit. And now I love strawberries, and I love mixing them with strawberry and rhubarb, and it's rhubarb season, and all the strawberries and are
Mm.
still mostly American. And I'm like, ah, and I'm trying to be so good. I'm trying to be so Canadian. So I'm like, oh man. But you know what? The freezer section has tons of Canadian strawberries. It's like, oh, okay. Frozen strawberries, if I'm just gonna put them with rhubarb in a pie anyhow, it's okay.
It
Like, that's
works.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
That's funny that you say that about the seasons because I kind of forgot how exciting it used to be when the oranges showed
Yeah,
up
right?
in the
Oh,
store. And it was
yeah.
like really an exciting because it was so rare. You only got them for a short period every year that you just, now it's like, I don't even think twice about them. I'm just like, nah, whatever, mandarin oranges, eat those all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
We when
Oh,
we yeah, citrus season used to be a huge thing.
And we
Yeah.
yeah.
tend to compromise on the quality of
Hmm.
so many of these things,
Yeah.
like strawberries. Like
Hmm.
sometimes there's often the complaint in the house that this tasted like a wet sponge. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. It was
Hmm.
huge and red and really pretty looking, but its flavor's gone because we've
Yeah.
chosen that it's more important for us to produce something that looks nice rather than has the quality
Yeah.
of food we want, right? And so that's a whole
The
complicated thing too, right?
Yeah, there are people who write history about that very thing, about like the changing view of vegetables. Like I have, what is this poster behind me that's got like random root vegetables?
Oh, yeah.
It's really old and it I think it's really funny. But I'm like, these don't look like most of the vegetables we eat. We have such a uniform desire for like uniformity in our food,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
there's people paying attention to that now, but I think in the past, if you're growing your own food, those are the potatoes. It doesn't matter what they look like.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You worked hard to grow that potato, so you're gonna eat it.
It
Like,
is still gonna feed me.
yeah.
So, like,
Yes.
yeah.
When you hear the term vintage, we often hear the word vintage in terms of food or recipes or cookbooks. Does that refer to a particular time period?
So vintage, retro, and like antique, there are actual qualifications for them. I can't name them off the top of my
Oh,
head,
okay.
but there are things where it's like
Okay.
it's relevant to the time you're in. So like
Okay.
retro might be like back 25 years, or like I can't remember what it is, and
Okay,
like
okay.
vintage, it's back a certain like from the time you're at. It's back a
Okay.
certain number of
Oh.
time period. I think that is
Hmm.
generally what it means.
Okay,
Oh,
so it's like saying like vintage could be used in 50 years from now to refer to now. Kind of.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
it's a
It's
sliding
a
scale.
relativism. Yeah, it's
Okay.
relative. Yeah,
okay, okay.
yeah. So I
That
think
makes
probably
sense.
a lot of people are calling like they might. I feel like when I was growing up, the retro was like the 50s.
Yeah, I
So
think
I'm assuming we've moved forward in time to the 80s. I
Unfortunately,
don't
it
know.
appears
Like,
that we have.
so
yeah.
that's why we feel like slightly offended if we hear someone referring to like the 80s
Yeah.
as retro. It's like that's
Hmm.
not that long ago. Actually, it
Uh,
is.
Yeah. Yeah. We played that game a few times where it's like, wait a minute, like, oh, between now and the 60s, that's the same as like the 60s to the 1900s, and that seems
Oh,
oh
so
yeah.
no.
crazy.
That just
Yeah.
like gets you. That just gets you
Yeah.
in the gut.
What?
Right. So then when you're looking at more historical stuff, are those like heritage kind of
Yeah.
like what kind of blanket term
Mm. I think
can we kind of
I
maybe go back with?
I think I use historical. I just, and then I usually will just periodize the recipe to the time period. Like
Okay.
a recipe from 1902 is very different than a recipe from 1950. So I'm just like a historical recipe, or
Hmm.
yeah, or old, I don't know, like an old recipe.
It's just old.
Just old.
It's a recipe I
Again,
found.
it's
Yeah.
relative to where
Yeah,
you're
it's
at.
just, yeah, exactly. Like everyone's gonna find companies coming books, like your kids are gonna be like, these are old. I'm like,
Hmm.
They kind of
they're
already
old.
are.
They
I mean,
are.
really, some of
They're
them.
really they're really dated. There's some like
Yeah.
classic recipes in there, but other ones you're like, oh, what? I feel like cookbooks go through trends and styles, and like as
Hmm.
someone who studies cookbooks pretty like intensely, like yeah, there's trends and styles, and they change, and how they're written has changed over 200 years, and what like if you the look at a recipe book from like 1700s, it's very much just a list of ingredients and like
Mm.
maybe bake or cook over open fire or whatever. It's like implied you kind of know what you're doing. It's not, yeah, there's a lot of intuition in the cooking in the past.
Hmm.
And then they scientific, like they kind of make it scientific in the mid 1800s. You start getting more like cooking schools, and let's like train women to be housewives. And they kind of, it's interesting because they almost view it as a profession. You're supposed to be
Mm.
good at it. You're not paid for it, but like it is an important, like the household economy is a thing that they
Ah.
talk about and train you to be understanding, which is very cool. And I think like they study kitchens and what's efficient in the kitchen, and like that triangle comes from that period, that triangle of the sink to
Oh,
the
yeah.
food storage to your stove. And sometimes we get away from that now, and I find it frustrating. Like, we figured it out. Why are what are you doing? We already figured this out. We know what's efficient.
Yes.
Let's keep doing it. Um, so there's like so much like change in how recipes are written and how kitchens are arranged and how what stuff is in things, and the technology impacts things, people's
Mm.
values change, discovery of like germ theory changes a lot of stuff. Like, all of these things are really like linked us into what we have now, like the white sanitary kitchen idea. Like, can't
Hmm.
see speckless dirt, and kitchens started like very early 1900s. We're moving towards that, but they're still very wood, and they're like, you can't sanitize wood and that kind of thing, and you just get like, let's not have our sinks surrounded by wood sinks, like freestanding porcelain sinks, and all sorts of change that is impacting like how we eat, but also how we think about food and what's important to us in that food. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I love food history for, is like exploring, oh, it's so interesting that like this particular recipe has stuck around and
Hmm.
we all make some version of that. Like, that's really cool. And there's like other recipes you're like, this one died out for a reason, or this one no one makes anymore because our tastes have just fundamentally changed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that note,
Yeah.
well, I mean, we could go many directions on that note. I feel like we could talk all day long, but okay, well, we should probably talk about this cake.
Yes. What'd you think of the cake?
So in advance of the episode, we asked we just asked you to send us a recipe that you like, whatever
Hmm.
recipe you like. You chose the burnt sugar cake from
Hmm.
the Five Roses Flour cookbook. Can you tell us why you chose this recipe, first of all?
Okay, well, one of the first things I think when you introduce yourself to historical cooking is you want to try to make something that you'll actually eat, because otherwise it's kind of wasting food. I I usually try to make something that I'm gonna eat. So that's a nice introduction. But also, I think cakes are kind of the flavor and how cakes have changed. It's, you can kind of tell it tastes like an old-fashioned cake to me. I'm like,
Mm.
it's a different flavor of cake than you're kind of used to. It's still really good. It's different. But also, I made this cake when I was working as a student at Heritage Park, and we all loved it. I was like, this is a really good cake. I think I saved the recipe because they printed it out for us every day, so I had it, but I didn't know where it was from. And the recipe disappeared on me. And I was like, oh no. So I lost it. And then I was looking, because I've been sharing recipes on Threads, and I was just looking through the cookbook, and I was like, burnt sugar cake. Oh my gosh, I've been looking for this recipe for years. There it is. So that was also because it was a recipe for me that had a little bit of nostalgia of myself from like having
Hmm.
made it and really enjoyed it before. Um, and I think like, yeah, cake is just kind of a universal interesting thing to make, because it's just it also feels like that recipe is very modern, as well as being very old fashioned.
Mm.
Burnt sugar cake seems like something you might find at a restaurant now, or
Oh,
it would be the
yeah.
trendy thing on TikTok or something, like, oh, I made a burnt sugar cake, and everyone's like, oh my God, a burnt sugar cake.
What's
So for
that?
me, it felt like both timeless and also incredibly time period bound. Yeah,
Okay.
and like Five Roses cookbook is also like why I picked it. It's like a very popular Canadian cookbook. It was like widely, everyone at some point, I think, who has grown up in Canada from like 1913 to 1970s has had a Five Roses cookbook in their house, whatever edition that is. It's very universally loved,
Mm.
and recognizable to people. So that's the other reason I picked it. It's like from the second edition or second version of this cookbook. So it's a very classic Canadian cookbook.
Well, as you know, I took on baking the cake, and I
Okay.
looked at the recipe and I was like, I
Th-
think there's something missing here. Like there was some information I wasn't getting from it. So I
yeah.
emailed you. We sorted it out there, and it turned out there was a little bit more instruction, like on a previous page in the book,
Yes.
to help kind of set up for. And then there's a variety of cakes, which I think is
Yeah.
also something you see in these old books too. It's like there's a sort of a intro bit about what we're going to be making, and then here's different ways to make it,
Yep.
like six
Mhm.
different ways.
Yeah. here's like the universal instruction of how you make a cake. Okay, great. Here's a bunch of different cake types you can try. And I
Yeah.
think you clued me onto that. I don't know why it never occurred to me to like fully read, which is a bad food historian, but I was like reading it and you're like, "Oh, is there more instructions?" Like, "Is there more instruction?" And I looked at the front and was like, "Oh, that is instruction." Yeah, okay. You're right. There is 100%, like each section of that cookbook gives you some basic like understanding how to make a cake. And I was like, of course it does. Why did that never occur to me? Because I do have older cookbooks and that's not even there. But it
Hmm.
like,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So like it's in that one. I'm like, that's why people also probably liked it. It was just like it had that information for them. And
Well,
as you're
yeah.
coming to Canada, I think someone said that they had immigrated, their family had immigrated, and a cookbook was this like Five Roses cookbook was given to them as a Canadian cookbook to like learn to cook in Canada.
Oh,
So like very cool. Well, it makes
yeah.
sense now why it's so beloved. It just got like the information in the front, which I had not fully clued into until you told me, and I was like, oh, this is great. I learn something new every day.
Well,
It's
I'm
good.
happy to help.
Yeah,
So then when
great. Thank you.
so then I was looking through a bit of it. There's like how to test if your eggs are good, which is,
Mm,
always useful. There's a description of testing your oven by holding your hand in
yes.
it for a certain number of seconds to see if
Yes.
it's a quick, moderate, or slow oven,
Mm-hmm.
which means, that helps you decide how to set it and how long to bake your
Yeah.
cake. And some of the cakes say it's for a quick oven, some of them say it's for a slow oven, whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought that
Yeah.
was kind of cute too. Okay, so we're doing a mixture of sugar. Let me see here. Sugar, eggs, butter, vanilla, water, flour, baking powder.
Mm-hmm.
That's your cake batter.
Basic cake. Yep.
Pretty basic, right?
Yep.
And then you have 1 cup of sugar, white sugar.
Mm-hmm.
You set it on the stove to burn until quite brown, is what
Yeah.
the instructions say. So this is your burnt sugar element. And I think I even did a little SOS text to Erin to be like, okay, I don't know if I've ever actually done this. Do I just put it in the pan and like stir it around and like wait? And she's like, yeah, you'll see, it'll turn brown. Like she was
Yeah.
coaching me.
It'll melt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's
Just
such a
like
strange process.
yeah, you like never think that sugar melts really. Like, I mean, candies melt. Obviously it melts, but you're you're not like, "Oh yeah, basic white sugar is just gonna melt when I put it on the stove." What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem
Yeah.
like a reality for sure.
No.
It's a weird one.
Yeah.
And I think calling it burnt is a
Mm,
misnomer. You're not
Yeah.
burning it. You're just like melting it down and it turns kind of like a caramel,
Hmm.
yeah,
right? And
exactly.
that's, if you've never had it, that's what it tastes like to me.
Hmm.
It's like caramel,
Hmm.
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Okay. Um, then you add in 1/2 cup of boiling water and stir well.
Yeah. That boiling part's important.
Yeah, it needs to be
Yeah.
boiling. And then it kind of goes like,
Yeah.
careful when you do
Be
that.
very careful. Yeah. I forgot it did that and I was like, "Oh, whoop, careful."
Yeah, take it easy.
Oh, I didn't realize I was making sponge toffee.
Yeah, it kind of
Made
does
me
this
think of,
whole,
yeah, it's it's crazy.
yeah.
Be careful.
Okay, and then you let it cool and you add half of that to your cake batter. So you
Hmm.
have
Okay.
burnt sugar in the cake, and then you're also going to make like a sort of like an icing by mixing icing sugar into the rest of the burnt sugar to put on top after. So that
Hmm.
flavor of caramel or burnt sugar, whatever you want to call it, is through this whole cake.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah, it
You
is really good
love
cake.
this cake.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think one,
this is
did you
good.
like it? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's really good
it's
too.
so moist, and I don't know if that's because of the burnt sugar or what, but it's like a super moist cake.
Yeah. It was surprisingly moist because often like I'm like, oh, my cakes are dry. Oh, darn it. Like it was like, oh, this cake is super moist and it stayed moist for several days, which was amazing.
it had a
Oh.
very interesting texture to it. Like it didn't
Mm.
seem like most cakes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a and the icing on top is, I don't know, the key ingredient to me.
It's good. I
It's
think that's where
good.
you taste like the most burnt sugar is in the icing.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does, because, okay, I didn't make this. So, question,
Yeah.
Heather, did you
Mm-hmm.
put the icing on while the cake was still warm, or do you let it cool before you put the icing on?
I told you all the instructions I have.
Okay.
So your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. I let
Um,
mine cool before I put it on.
I think
Okay.
it was a little warm. So when I
Mm.
first put it on, it kind of melted in a little
Yeah.
bit. And then I went, whoa, stop, leave it
Okay.
alone, wait a little longer. Um, it also doesn't tell you how much icing sugar.
No, it's
Oh.
just tell you
So
how you feel.
yeah, measure with your heart and just. So I may have also had that icing a little thinner,
Okay.
which might have been why it sort of seemed to kind of melt in when I first started putting it on. And I was like, no, I left the cake alone and I added more sugar. So you just have to
Yeah.
feel it until it's kind of sticky
Mm-hmm.
icing. It's kind of gooey. It's not like a buttercream or something that's like
Hmm.
spreadable or pipeable. It's like kind of this sticky gooey topping. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so
And then
good.
it like kind of hardens up a little bit, like when you leave it, because it stiffens up a bit more. At least mine did. I
You
like
can almost get like that crust that you get with
yeah.
sugar, like just on the
Hmm.
top. Mm.
Like
Yep.
a like I'm thinking of boiled icing because
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
boiled icing is something that I feel like is, I don't know how common
Super.
it is, but it seems like a prairie thing because it was
Yeah.
something grandma did. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
got
Mhm.
that
It's
texture
a
where it's
very
got that crisp on the top from the sugar crystallizing or whatever.
yeah. It's the old-fashioned way of making icing. Like it's in all of the a lot of the books, the historical books will say like the icing is boiled icing. It's not buttercream like what we would understand today. There might be one or two, but most of the icings are boiled in some way.
Mhm.
I'm a fan of that.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
liked that this icing kind of sunk into that top layer of the cake because it
Hmm.
almost made it, and I kind of I questioned whether to use this term or not, but it was almost pudding, like
Yeah.
pudding cake on top.
Yeah.
And I mean, my children generally don't really like cake that much. But man, my kid, my one guy who usually is like, he'll eat some of a cake and then hand it to me. Like every birthday party I've been to, I have finished that cake, let me tell you.
Mm.
He ate two out of the two huge pieces of this from what Heather gave me. And I was like, where did it go? He's like, oh, I ate that last night. And I was like, what? You don't ever like cake. He was like, you have to make this or make Heather make it for me again.
So
That's
good.
amazing.
It was,
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but man, that everything in this is
It's a it's a good
so
cake.
good.
Yeah.
Such a
Mhm.
good cake. Yeah.
Yeah. Now
What
I
are
want to
you?
make the other varieties that are on this in this
Okay,
cookbook.
so what are the other
You should.
varieties? Because you got
Yeah.
your eyes on it.
Well, there's one called a children's sponge cake. I'm not sure why it's
Mm.
got that name. There's one called a sunshine cake.
Yeah.
There's a sultana cake, strawberry
Ooh.
cake, tic-tac-toe cake. I'm not sure why that. It has
I
raisins, currants, cinnamon. Sounds good.
I am like a food scholar. I'm not like I happen to also cook because I don't believe that you can do food history without actually trying recipes. I'm like,
That
what's the
seems
point if you're
right.
not gonna like if you're gonna study recipes and not try them? That's kind of silly. Like the whole point of as the recipe is to try it. So
Hmm.
you better try it. But there's some
You
very
better.
you better try it. Don't tell me you spent like an hour and a half writing about it and you didn't even try it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
That'd be
mean,
impossible. How could you not try it?
right? It's like a very difficult type of writing because you're also get very hungry.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
don't we know it?
gotcha.
Podcasting about food does the
Oh,
same thing.
Yeah.
I bet.
Okay, well, in the interest of time,
Mm.
um, do you have new projects or research or things coming up that you want to tell everybody about?
I think right now I'm still kind of thinking and toying with like what I'm doing. I'm kind of right now interested in diving a bit more into like Alberta food stories and kind of seeing what an Alberta food history might look like. And then I'm also thinking about a project right now regarding like cooking while camping because I discovered a source or was shown a source by an archivist. I didn't discover it. In the White Museum that is very interesting, recipes from a guiding family. And I'm kind of interested in the idea of like how did people cook while camping in the like 1920s to 60s and what does that look like?
Ooh, that sounds really fun.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of what I'm
Hmm.
thinking about right now.
If you need anybody to camp and test out recipes, just call
Okay,
me.
we'll
I'm all
hook you
over
up.
that.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Well,
that's so
thank you so
fascinating.
much for for being here with us. And can you tell our listeners where to follow along with what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on Threads and Instagram mostly right now. I also do Blue Sky. My handles are at Kesia TK. And then I also have a blog that I have not touched for years, but if you want to read stuff about my historical cooking adventures from a few years back, it's potatoes, rhubarb, and ox. And yeah, you can also kind of Google me if you want to find some of the things I've written. And there's some articles that are free access articles, so that's important. So yeah, you'll be able to find
Excellent.
those from just looking for me. Yeah,
Cool.
Perfect.
And
Well,
we will put links to all that in the show notes so everybody can
mhm.
yeah,
just click through and
awesome.
follow you and see what you're doing. This has
I'm
been
gonna
really fun.
move myself before my computer dies.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
this has
Yeah.
been great. Thank you so much. It was so fun to chat with other people who love to talk about food.
And now for the fine print. Links to recipes and other things we talked about in this episode can be found in the show notes or on our website, www.threekitchenspodcast.com. Come say hello on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and TikTok. We'd love to connect. And if you enjoy the show, pass it on. Word of mouth is the #1 way people learn about new podcasts. Thank you so much for listening.